Alright, hello everyone. We're back with another Battle Redux video. Um, this is the third in my little series from this season, and I decided we're gonna keep going through, and each battle video will feature one person from the previous one, because why not? So what we're showing here in our battle today is going to be some matches between Terran 23 and Gogs, who we met last time. As I mentioned last time, Gogs really likes focusing on these particular 6 Pokemon, being relatively new and I think just trying to figure out how best they can work with the tools they had. On the opposite side, and also I'll say that since Gogs has these 6 that they like to use, I'm not going to talk too much about team building from Gogs' perspective as we start off this battle. Terran 23 is the new person in our battle here. And in addition to the 6 Pokemon that you're seeing on their team right now, they had also drafted Arcanine, Lycanroc, Claydol, and Magneton. So just looking at the 6 they brought plus the 4 I just mentioned, they actually have a very they basically have a sand team here. They've got 3 or 4 ground types, a rock type, and a steel type among their 10. And just kind of running with that honestly works pretty well in a lot of situations. Maybe not as good against Gogs because Gogs already has the Bronzong and the Quagsire. Plus their Decidueyes and Quagsire can start hitting back relatively hard against the ground and rock types on Terran 23's team. So if I had been Terran 23, I would have maybe focused a little bit more, maybe bringing in Arcanine in particular. And Arcanine's my favorite, so I'm a little biased there. But I think Arcanine would have worked, honestly, really well against almost Gog's entire team, except for Quagsire. Because, Togekiss, not all that physically defensive. Dusclops, that would have been harder to deal with. Bronzong, weak to fire. Decidueye, weak to fire. Quagsire, hard to deal with. Dragalge doesn't have a very good physical defense. And even for both Togekiss and Dragalge, Arcanine actually even has a super effective attack that it can use in Wild Charge and Outrage, respectively. I think Arcanine also gets a ground move. Was it Stalking Tyranitar? I forget. But anyway, I would have loved to have seen Terran 23 bring an Arcanine to one of these matches, but they haven't. What instead they've done, they've got their Hippowdon here, which is, again, relatively physically tanky and can also set up sand, which is good for their team. And so the Hippowdon also is basically often used both as a stealth rock setter and as a toxic staller. Now, of course, we're not allowed to use toxic stall in this league, or at least it's highly discouraged. I don't think anyone's ever been penalized for it if it has popped up. Let's see, they've got Mandibuzz, also good for toxic stuff, good for defogging, although if you've already got stealth rock set up on the opposing side, you don't necessarily want to do defog. Let's see, what else is Mandibuzz good for? Mandibuzz can sometimes be a good foul play user, which might come in handy particularly for Decidueye and Bronzong. Amoonguss is just great in general. I've used it on some of my past teams. I think we might have seen that in some of my past videos. It's Regenerator. It's pretty tanky. It's just kind of great utility there. And none of those first 3 are hugely damaging. So on the other side, Terrans brought some of the harder hitters with Excadrill, Heliolisk, and Hitmonchan. Excadrill there, ground moves, again, great against Dragalge. Steel will be great against Togekiss. It's a little interesting seeing Heliolisk on a sand team. It usually much prefers rain. But I think I've seen it used on sand teams before, and I'm just not exactly familiar with that strategy. But it works out relatively well. Hitmonchan, again, and also Heliolisk is going to be their special attacker, which I'm presuming was entirely brought for Togekiss. Because it's hard to look at Gog's team and think you're going to do much specially against it. Then you've got Hitmonchan here. Hitmonchan has actually several strategies it can use. It can be a good rapid spinner. It can be a good bulk up user, especially with Drain Punch. And it learns all the different elemental punches, so you can have some interesting coverage depending on what your opponent has. Now, as I mentioned before, I would have actually probably recommended Terran take Arcanine for some of the reasons already mentioned. Lycanroc, maybe not as much, but Lycanroc would certainly be great against Togekiss. And it gets Psychic Fang, so it could have done nice on Dragalge. Crunch would be nice on Lycanroc for use against Dusclops, Bronzong, and Decidueye. In fact, any Dark move will actually help quite a bit for someone thinking about trying to face Gogs. So I don't know. So the Mandibuzz is going to be great there. I don't know if any of Terran's other Mons use a Dark move. Let's see, what are Terran's other two? Claydol and Magneton, as I mentioned. Both of them, again, work relatively well in Sand. Magneton could be interesting against Togekiss in the same way that in a similar way that Heliolisk is, but actually both stabs work in that case. Magneton also is immune to poison and has a lot of better resistances than Heliolisk does. So I'd almost think that Magneton might be a better choice than Heliolisk in this particular build if Terran was looking at facing Gogs. But this is just the first battle. I haven't shown you the preview of the second battle yet. We'll get there in a moment. But let's go and now quickly watch through this first battle. All right, Hippowdon and Bronzong, those are both pretty sensible leads. Both rocks come up, makes sense. Ooh, Toxic coming in. All right, Gogs has already changed things up a bit, and there's Scald, also different. They used Aqua Tail last time. Let's see, Terran's using this phasing strategy to try to get chip damage on a lot of Gog stuff, but with Toxic on Hippowdon, not the best thing to keep trying. Now, Gyro Ball, I'm surprised he used Gyro Ball on Hippowdon because Hippowdon is physically tanky and it's also slow. Gyro Ball isn't going to help much. An Iron Head or a Zen Headbutt would have been better. And actually, yeah, Terran's entire team isn't going to be great to use Gyro Ball against. You got a Rapid Spin. Oh, there's the Rapid Spin on Hitmonchan. But that Toxic spreading is going around quite a bit. And Terran does not have any Clerics on their team right now. Drain Punch does the damage it needs to, though. Bronzong is down, which is kind of unfortunate. There's the Elemental Punch I mentioned earlier. And Togekiss coming through with the Air Slash. All right, and not Screens. Good prediction on the electric attack there. Ooh, Substitute. Earth. Okay, yep. Yeah, Gogs has already in this match improved quite a bit from last time. Hippowdon tanks the Earthquake pretty well, gets the Slack Off on. And the Scald comes in. Which, again, we'd seen Scald earlier, so I'm kind of surprised the switch to Amoonguss didn't happen a turn beforehand. Let's see. Now, Gogs got burned by Roserade last time, and he makes the switch to Togekiss this time. Good moves there. I think Togekiss is faster than Amoonguss, so... Okay, it is, but it didn't opt for Air Slash. Ooh, and a Spore comes in. This is getting fun. Heliolisk comes in... Now, Terran should predict the switch here, and he does. Nice. So he's going to get some other attack in. Ooh, Glare. Interesting. Not the most useful against Quagsire, but hey, you'll still get it paralyzed a couple of times. Especially with Dark Pulse. He might have been going for a Paraflinch strategy there. Also, again, good predictions. And it looks like that Togekiss isn't taking damage, so it must... have heavy duty boots, which is interesting and a good option there. Let's see, Air Slash. Ooh, okay, yeah. Okay, cool, yeah. It might or might not have killed Amoonguss just by damage rolls, but it took out Hippowdon instead. And the Sand is up, which is good for Excadrill, because it gets both Sand Rush and Sand Force. Usually runs Sand Rush for the speed advantage. And yeah, Quagsire tanks the Earthquakes and dishes out the Scalds. Now, Amoonguss is burned, and I think Mandibuzz is still toxic, so this is now really in Gog's wheelhouse, because we've mentioned previously that Gog's had a somewhat defensive team. So at this point, we are just kind of in a bit of a stall phase here as Seismitos and Ice, as we're just trying to wear Terran down enough for the Toxic and the burn damage to really get some of the kills. Now Seismic Toss keeps coming in. Probably going to get a switch here, or a synthesis. There's the switch, yep. Because once Amoonguss is the last one alive, it can't do the regenerator anymore. The knockoff was good against Dusclops. Alright, let's see. Okay, not much. Like, yeah, there's not much Dragalge can do against Amoonguss. I'm kind of surprised they didn't put a Sludge Wave in. Maybe he didn't have it. Maybe he might have had Toxic Spikes instead. Ooh, Draco Meteor. Nice. But yeah, honestly, eating that spore was also relatively good because there is a sleep clause here in OU that if Dragalge was asleep and he swapped again, Amoonguss couldn't put anything else to sleep. And a Clear Smog raises the stats back up. Amoonguss is still alive, but there's Sludge Bomb. Oh wait, he's resetting stat reductions too. Yup, that's what Clear Smog does. Alright, and so there we have Gogs getting their first win. And I didn't, I talked through that relatively quickly, and actually, let me scroll back through the list here. I don't think, we'll go back officially to the beginning and try to go through things more. I don't think I had much to add after that first talk through, aside from great improvement here from Gogs. Good first moves, and a Toxic is a great thing to use on a Hippowdon, because Hippowdon are there for longevity, usually, so putting a Toxic on one of them is one of the best ways to wear them down. And as we've seen already, Quagsire does have Scald this time around instead of Aquatail. It does a good stuff. And hang on, actually, let's see. Point of stuff. Okay, Quagsire did take damage, but then healed it. Leftover on Quagsire, also very good strat. Okay, and I was about to say I was surprised Hippowdon didn't have leftovers, but it had a Citrus Berry instead. So one of the others has leftovers. I'm betting it's the Amoonguss. Actually, no, Amoonguss will have Black Sludge, so maybe it might have been Mandibuzz has the leftovers. Nope. Oh no, Mandibuzz is Rocky Helmet. Yeah, I'm kind of surprised Knockoff didn't do as much, or only did as much as it did, because it's weakness there. But that must this is a tanky Bronzong build as opposed to an offensive, maybe. Here came the Gyro Ball. What do we have? Okay, yeah, so it doesn't have Zen Headbutt this time, which would have been great against Hitmonchan, and we did see it used last battle when Bronzong took out Roserade. But Terran's letting Bronzong just spread this Toxic around. And let's see. So I think at this point, Gogs lets the Bronzong get sacked. I might have swapped the Togekiss here, because we've now seen the Drain Punch. Or I might have swapped to Dusclops, because I think Gogs just lets Bronzong go down, which surprises me a little bit. Especially because now there are no more rocks on Terran's side, and Bronzong was the Stealth Rock setter. So, again, I would have made a swap to tank the next Drain Punch and have a little bit of advantage there. Because Togekiss is hitting the Ice Punch anyway now. So it would have been maybe a little less healthy than it was before. Good predictions, though. All of these moves at this point are relatively making sense, aside from not switching to take the Drain Punch a moment ago. Earthquake, yep, trying to scope things out. He was probably doing a sub because he might have been worried about a Toxic. Now, based on the team that he has left, I wouldn't necessarily have expected a Toxic because Amoonguss and Excadrill are there. It might have been nice to expect a Scald. But Earthquake really does make the most sense. So The substitute, you lost some health there. I maybe would have done a swap. I maybe would have just predicted the earthquake and gone into Mandibuzz. But we now do this here. Taking the earthquake with a tanky thing, again, I would have switched to Mandibuzz. Because I believe your Mandibuzz is faster. Most likely. So, if you're worried about the Scald or the Toxic coming from Quagsire, you would have had a turn at least to scope things out and see what else Mandibuzz could do. Especially because this Quagsire, we've seen it has leftovers. Getting the knockoff on that would have been very useful. But now Hippowdon's just taking damage. We get a swap because here comes the Scald again. Yep. Now that was a good predict. And unfortunately gets the burn. And Amoonguss doesn't care about a burn that much, because you've got Black Sludge, you've got Regenerator. It's not a physical attacker. It's not a big problem, but it is just a very minor annoyance. Good predictions for the most part. Now, there's a slightly surprising thing. Now, again, I don't remember if Amoonguss had a Sludge Bomb on it. Keeping Togekiss in was a risk. Instead of using Roost, I would have probably gone in with the Air Slash, because if you're trying to get health back, there are a couple of things you could have thought. Gogs might have thought Amoonguss was going to switch out and they got a free Roost, which I hope was the thought process there. If it were just to recover health, anticipating a Sludge Bomb would still be super effective after the Roost, and so Air Slash would have been the better move in that case. So I'm hoping what Gogs was thinking there was trying to anticipate a swap. But instead he gets put to sleep. And at this point, do we get another... Oh, okay. And Togekiss, again, still staying in, which surprises me. And here comes the swap. With the correct substitute prediction this time. Glare's interesting. I'm wondering what other move Heliolisk had. I don't think we get to see its third move. Oh, yeah, fourth move. And it's Dark Pulse. That's right. Duh. Because I talked about Paraflinch earlier, which is a great strategy. I wouldn't necessarily... Paraflinch is honestly a much better done on Togekiss than it is on Heliolisk. Because Togekiss has Serene Grace, and Air Slash, I think, has a 30% flinch chance. I forget what Dark Pulse's flinch chance is. I think it might be like only 20 or 10. I'm not sure. You know what? Again, let me check it out. Go over to Smogon in my other window. Dark Pulse is a 20% chance. So yeah. 20% without Serene Grace versus 30% with Serene Grace. There are other strategies for Heliolisk that I think would have been a bit better. Especially just like maybe just getting Hyper Voice on just to get that stab move. It also goes through Substitute, which is nice. Heliolisk can also learn Surf. That wouldn't necessarily have been very good against Gogs, but it's a possibility in other situations. And so here we've got Amoonguss, which is threatening the Giga Drain, makes the right prediction there. I think at this point, mostly... Oh, and it's Clear Smog and not... So yeah, I don't know. So no Sludge Bomb, at least not showing yet. But Air Slash... So here's where I was talking about earlier. I wasn't sure what was going to happen. Because we see Amoonguss at 47%. We know Air Slash did 47%. That could be a kill... But if damage rolls go slightly differently, Clear Smog will come back and kill Togekiss. So since we've seen Clear Smog instead of Roost, or instead of Sludge Bomb, Roost might be a good option now. But instead, Gogs tried to just roll the dice with the damage rolls and ended up getting the advantage of the swap, taking down Hippowdon. Now, I think he was threatening... Oh, okay, he didn't go immediately for the Iron Head, which surprises me a little bit, especially because Quagsire is often known to have Unaware, so Swords Dance is not really going to help once Quagsire comes out. Now, again, taking a Earthquake from an Excadrill at neutral, still going to hurt. And yeah, we see 40% there. crit and burn, so very unlucky on Terran's part. Because now Earthquake won't get that 40 again, it only gets 19. And the Scald comes in for the kill. Let's see, does this Quagsire have Earthquake? Or not Earthquake, Recover. It doesn't matter, he swaps it out. Takes the Spore. Which again, Amoonguss, I'm surprised he didn't try to use Giga Drain there unless he was predicting the Togekiss. In which case I would have expected now Togekiss to swap out, and it doesn't, so it dies. So Gogs there, I would have absolutely swapped to Dragalge, anticipating the Clear Smog. But, you know, this battle ended up working out. I'm just going to speed through the rest of it now. So yeah, at that point, once Togekiss was put to sleep, I would have swapped to Dragalge. But Dusclops does a good job of whittling down Terran's last two with Seismic Toss. And Gogs ends up getting the win. We'll finish through these last few turns. There we go. Oh, not quite, because we've got Amoonguss to worry about. No, oh, Focus Blast. I didn't notice that earlier, which is weird. You've got Sludge Bomb. I'm wondering if that was a misclick. But I would have absolutely been using Sludge Bomb here. Now, considering we know Clear Smog is the attack, I also actually wouldn't have been scared of spamming Draco Meteor. Because if a Clear Smog actually comes in, you get that stat reset, which Terran discovered at the end here. So barely survives, but then resets Dragalge's special. Bit of an oops, not that it mattered at this point with a 1% Amoonguss as your last thing left. But yeah, there's the battle. Gogs wins there. Great to see, honestly, that it's certainly a lot of improvement from Gogs from the last time I looked at one of their battles. Alright, well that's battle 1 of this pair. We'll go then next into battle 2. And here we do see Terran changes things up a little bit. Again, they don't bring the Arcanine, which I would thought would have been a good move here. But they do swap Heliolisk for Magneton, which I think will serve them well. They also, what was the other swap out that they had? So they got several swaps. I'm being dumb. What was their other stuff? So they've now brought in Claydol for Amoonguss. I would have kept Amoonguss there, because Amoonguss is basically your only way to take down Quagsire easily. They also swap Hitmonchan for Lycanroc, which is also surprising to me because Ice Punch is great. Now, again, I mentioned Lycanroc has the Psychic Fangs and it has Crunch, and those will also be helpful. So, actually, that's actually, yeah, not as bad. Claydol I'm absolutely surprised about because its stab doesn't do much to Gog's team, except Earthquake on Dragalge, which, considering Dragalge was how the last battle left, I guess I'm not too surprised that Terran might have been worried about it. But we'll see how it goes. Again, first off, watching the battle in fast mode. We taunt to stop the Stealth Rocks. Nice, and the knockoff. Okay, great start for Terran here. Gyro Ball, again, not can't pause these first run-throughs. But Gyro Ball, not the best. Oh, and there's Levitate instead of Heat Proof. Awesome. But Rapid Spin clears the rocks. And Toxic comes in. Shadow Ball! Okay, that's creative. I can see how that helps now. Again, Shadow Ball, like Dark moves, hits an entire half of Gog's team quite well. But the Toxic Stall works. And then, yeah, okay, in there. I was surprised he didn't switch to Quagsire ahead of the Magneton. But Hippowdon is now scalded and burned. Okay, interesting. Gotta do some other swaps. Alright, not as great of a start for Gogs at the moment, but he's certainly seeing where some of the bigger threats are and swapping out of them, which is great. Here comes Draco. Yup, and there goes Hippowdon. And Terran has now just lost his Sand Setter. Okay, and here, Quagsire and Excadrill, which we saw last time. Great move on Gog's part. And Scald takes out half of the stuff. Hardstone. Hardstone Fling. What is a Hardstone Fling? He's got Surf and Scald. Okay, that's an error on Gog's part. Having both Surf and Scald, that's a bit redundant. Surf, I think, does a tad bit more damage, but Scald's benefit of a burn just makes it the better move in general. Alright, Quagsire I don't think is going to win against a burned Mandibuzz. It'll win against a toxic Mandibuzz, but with that burn it makes it hard. Alright, and Flash Cannon. Oh, that does a good chunk of damage already, even though it was resisted. And there's the Psychic Fangs Lycanroc. I mentioned the Psychic Fangs earlier. It must be Choice Banded, because I'm surprised he didn't... I'm surprised, yes. Terran should have swapped to a Mandibuzz there, absolutely, to tank the anticipated whatever, especially if Lycanroc was choiced. You want to get it out of that Psychic Fangs because it wasn't going to do much to the other things. But Dragalge comes in for the win again at the end. All right. Now let's go back to the start and go through it a little bit more detailed, shall we? All right, so we saw off the front, Terran learned off the bat to prevent Stealth Rocks from coming in. And yeah, at that point, I would have expected Gogs to have made a swap. Throughout much of the rest of the battle, we've seen Gogs has gotten good at being aware of when you're being noticeably threatened and need to get out. The fact that he stayed in for the knockoff is a bit surprising. I would have maybe swapped to, Togekiss there. Maybe Quagsire or Dragalge, but that was a good spot for a Togekiss swap. Because Jaraball just doesn't do much against Terran's team. Thankfully, Levitate comes in. We get Rocks out again, which quickly gets spun away. And the Toxic comes in. So good moves on Gog's part. And now here's the surprise. I would not have predicted this. Getting that Shadow Ball coming in. Good use of a Protect. So yeah, Gogs is leaning into the Toxic stall here, which is okay. Again, I don't think anyone's complained. Again, now right there, the Volt switch, I don't see why Gogs didn't switch into Quagsire right there. Because, he correctly predicted the parabolic charges from Heliolisk last time. And just was able to eat those attacks very easily. But now he's lost his Bronzong. Granted, Bronzong was already at low health. It only had 8% left. But just having it there in the background, if you can make a swap and take 0 damage, that's a free swap. So even though Bronzong didn't have a lot of health left, having something like that as a sap later on would have been a great move to have. But now he sees the opportunity with Hippowdon get a Scald in. Works out well. Now he's drowsy, worried about being put to sleep. I think he swapped out here if I recall correctly. He does, yes. And unfortunately doesn't predict Terran's swap. Now I'm surprised Terran swapped into Mandibuzz. I might have swapped into Magneton again, because it's going to be an Eviolite thing. At least I hope it is. And so it would have been able to take a Scald pretty well, because Quagsire was not going to use Earthquake against Hippowdon. But, the Mandibuzz would not have liked taking a Scald. Again, we've got physical attack here with the knockoff here. But certainly being burned is better than getting Toxic. So that might have that made sense. I guess not the move I would have done, but it works out well enough, because now you're forcing Gogs to make a non-free swap. So there's the Dragalge. Lost its Black Sludge, unfortunately, so now it's going to be losing health to Sand and not doing much else. Probably predicting Toxic Spikes there, and unfortunately that was not what came. Again, now I think Gogs maybe tried to use Focus Blast. Well, there are a couple of reasons Gogs might have used Focus Blast. he might have been anticipating a swap, and Focus Blast hits a third or half of Terran's team super effectively. Especially since the other thought that I had, using Sludge Wave against Mandibuzz, two of them just completely resist Sludge Wave and would have been a free swap. But I wouldn't necessarily have thought Terran to be swapping unless he was predicting the Sludge Wave. So a lot of back and forth predictions potentially going on there. There comes Draco, and Hippowdon is down. Now you don't want to get hit with an Earthquake. And again, like I mentioned this in the previous battle, Swords Dance isn't great when you've got a bulky Quagsire facing you from the other side. So I would have just used Earthquake there. Granted, he could have swapped into a Togekiss and he would have lost Earthquake, and in that case, Swords Dance is the better move. But we didn't see that last time Excadrill came out. So, and besides, if you didn't want to get caught Earthquaking a Togekiss, Dragalge still would not have liked an Iron Head. Dragalge does not have good physical defenses. So, I mean, Swords Dance is okay, but considering Quagsire is there, Iron Head might have been the better move. And Excadrill just stays in for the Scald. Oh, sorry, no, that was part of the previous turn, because Rock Slide missed. Okay. Scald and Surf come in. And as I already mentioned during the first part, having both Scald and Surf is definitely not optimal. There's basically no point to have Surf if you have Scald. The power boost isn't really worth it, and you could use that move slot on something else. On a different move like a Recover. Again, or an Ice Beam. Quagsire loves to use Ice Beam. And that would obviously be really helping this match, although if Roost gets off before Ice Beam comes in, you don't get the super effective part. We're trying to get the swap. And here's the thing I mentioned earlier. Getting Magnezone in on the Scald. Now, unfortunately, not much else happened there. Surprised. Well, okay, he hadn't shown Earthquake this match yet, but I'm always expect Quagsire has Earthquake. There wasn't much that Terran could have done now that I'm looking at what they had left. Psychic Feigns does great. Now, right here, I would have said that Decidueye using a grass move, swap to Mandibuzz. That'll let you reset your Lycanroc, because I have to assume this Lycanroc is choiced here. Because otherwise, there's no reason to use. Look at how much damage it did. It has to be choiced. But if you had Crunch, that would have been even better, especially since Dusclops is still there in the background. And now you've just lost Lycanroc, and you've got a burned Mandibuzz as the last thing left. And here's the thing, like, Gogs could have swapped something here, but with only one Pokemon left, it's better to let Decidueye get taken out, and you get the free swap in to whatever you send out next. So that was a good sack there, and still got some nice damage in. Not nice, but a little bit of chip damage from Shadow Ball. And then Dragalge comes in with the Draco Meteor and gets the job done. So great work there from Gogs. Huge improvement on their part from some of the previous matches we've seen. Again, there's still a few non-optimal plays here, but the team building has improved, the predictions have improved, and on Terran's sake, there was a lot of good predictions going on as well. I think Terran's leaned into the Sand team a bit much, and then also didn't quite use it to its maximum effect. Because Excadrill, I don't know which of Sand Force or Sand Rush they used. Usually Excadrill runs Sand Rush, and Gogs has a slower team, so Sand Rush doesn't help that much. And then, Lycanroc can get Sand Rush, but, it's already, again, crazy fast. Claydol doesn't get any direct benefit from Sand, it just has Levitate. And again, same thing, Magnezone doesn't necessarily get any huge benefit from Sand. So I like the idea of the Sand team. There's a little bit more finessing that Terran can get from there. And I would have absolutely tried to have brought an Arcanine in at some point. I think that would have helped even some of this up quite a bit. But that's not how these battles ended up playing out. So congrats to Gogs, and we will look at another one of Terran 23's battles next time. Hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you around. Bye.